The voice of sharing during ASEAN.
Ole, 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 ole. Hey, the football fever is officially on. And this is Arlene signing in.
This is Gowri, and you are tuned into our ASEAN news this morning.
Yeah, and welcome to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery of sharing. You can check us on our Facebook at durianasian.com. Also, you can go to the website, durianasian.com as well. Also, Twitter, right?
Yeah, you can also follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/DurianASEAN. And also, we are on TuneIn. You know, if you don't have your computer with you, you can listen to us on your smartphone.
On your mobile. And if you have any comments, you can comment in our Facebook and Twitter. But if you want to send us some private messages, you can send an email to durianasian@gmail.com. Anyway, we are going to kickstart our news with yesterday's or this morning's scores.
Oh, yeah, of course. You seem to be in a very World Cup-y mood for someone who doesn't usually follow football.
Well, I'm a bit nationalistic, so I guess the World Cup sort of wakened me up in a way. So the World Cup 2014 kickstart with the host Brazil defeating Croatia.
3-1.
Wow. And maybe you being the, the
God,
football...
you have to comment as well. That's not fair. So right, the score was 3-1, and even the one goal by Croatia was actually an own goal by Brazil. So Croatia actually did not score any goal last night, sadly.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, you want to?
Well, I just wanted to say that out of the 3 goals, 2 goals were actually scored by Neymar, who is he's a player that everybody was looking out for. He's very young and promising, and but we didn't know how he was going to perform. But for him to score 2 goals in the opening match is a very, very good sign.
Yeah, it is
I
a good sign.
Brazil could actually go very far in the World Cup.
As usual, Brazil has always go very far in the World Cup.
Not the last season. They lost to Dutch pretty early.
Yeah, but anyway, let's focus on our real story, which is the ASEAN news, the top ASEAN news. We should start with something related to Burma. So the Huffington Post, reported by Kim Baslin, on Friday, she reported that Gap is starting to make clothes in Myanmar where workers are horribly mistreated. So you know the brand Gap, right? I think there's one in KLCC. So they are starting to have a branch, like a factory branch in Myanmar, in a way that usually workers there are being horribly mistreated. And human rights activists question clothing giant Gap decision to start making clothes in Burma. So I guess nowadays a lot of American brands, American corporations are starting to penetrate Myanmar, seeing that Myanmar now is opening up its economy. And I'm not sure about politically they are opening up, but economy they are definitely liberalizing.
So I think these Myanmari workers have one of the lowest wage rates in the entire region.
Oh wow!
And the women are said to suffer the most. And cases of sexual harassment in work and night commutes make some strong deterrents for them to join the workforce.
In fact, one activist argued that the lowest wages in the region regulates the weak anemic regulation and weak labor unions is what led Gap to start its operation in the country. One thing I noticed is maybe that's one of the reasons why there's a huge number of migrant workers from Myanmar coming into Malaysia.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's not just Myanmar, actually. If you see a lot of designer items today is made in Myanmar, in India, in a lot of these, how do I say it, the less developed countries. And I guess that is to reduce the cost like what they're doing here.
That's true. And Gap argues that it worked with United States Agency for International Development and several NGO before it decided to set its venture in the country. But I think a lot of usually giant companies, they always wanted to cut costs, and they always want to have their operation in countries where regulation is very at a very loose at a very minimum. So I think Gap decision shows that they are looking for ways to really reduce the production side of the clothing line.
Right. It goes back to the whole idea of capitalism and how it exploits the workers for high productivity, but very, very less.
And mind you, a Gap, in at least in Malaysia, it's not that cheap. It's quite expensive.
Oh yeah, it is. Very
Probably
expensive.
it's cheaper in the home country, but in Malaysia, it's quite a very expensive brand. So anyway, Gap's decision in Myanmar comes at the U.S. lift its sanction in the country, like I said before. And given the decades of authoritarian rule, the country faces serious economic and political challenges. So it seems like the junta is showing sign of relaxing its grip on power, but it's also showing that it needs the money. That's why it's like liberalizing its economy. Next off, we have our local news from The Star.
Yeah, it's by The Star Online, and the headline reads, Ministry to clean up the streets. Authorities in Kuala Lumpur have decided to crack down homeless and beggars starting next month. That's very good news.
Really? Are you sure? Anyway, just read the news first. The government plans to bring them to Sungai Buloh Reintegration Centre and provide vocational training and psychological counselling. Part of the reintegration plan also includes providing them names to the supermarket and hypermarket. Which currently have around 40,000 vacancies. Some reports indicates that KL has at least 1,500 homeless people.
So why is this not good news, Arlene?
Well, the one that I read is a bit. I mean, I've been reading quite a few news on the homeless issues in Malaysia, and it seems like the government is actually not really addressing the homeless issue. Is more like it is a sore eye, to have homeless people around, and that's one of the reason why they sort of want to like evacuate all the homeless people.
And I think it's a very good effort that, I guess, like you said, all this while they have been ignoring the problem, but I think they are finally realizing that they have to do something about this, because when the tourists come over to KL, it's the capital city, and they want to see a beautiful, developed place, and to see all these beggars, going around, not necessarily beggars, like even all these syndicates, going around selling roses, selling tissues, selling umbrellas while you're eating. That can be really, really annoying as well.
But to me, I see it differently. I don't see this as a social problem, but more as a structural problem, especially in terms of economic structure. You create an economy where there's very little. There's very little sort of like social protection, towards the society, and that's one of the reasons why society, some of the society, for example, they couldn't afford a house, they couldn't afford, some basic things in life, and it pushes them away from living a normal life and becoming homeless in the end.
But then again, it's not only the local beggars. We also have some of these foreign workers who come here and they don't have a job, and then they end up being homeless and a beggar as well.
Yeah, they end up being a beggar, but that's the thing, like why they are in this country in the first place. It must be a reason, and I think it's also the reason of how the government regulates the foreign workers as well. So I believe this is not an issue of whether this is really not an issue whether we have a lot of beggars and we need to get rid of all these beggars. It's more
no, it's not about getting rid. That's not what I mean.
And besides, I think that to get them working in supermarkets and all that is not really addressing the problem. It's more like trying to, like finding a quick solution towards, in actuality in a really big,
but I think it is a good
problem.
start to actually, because working in supermarket, it's not really that bad. I mean, they do get paid well, so I think it's probably a good start to actually submit all their names to the supermarkets and hypermarkets nearby and get them to start from there, and maybe they can work their way up, because we don't want to give them everything and make it too easy as well.
Make it too easy to whom? Well, I disagree with how I totally disagree, because I personally I feel that this is a shortcut in terms of addressing certain issues. It's not really a real solution towards it. I think the real solution is the government should change its economic policy towards a more I guess not necessarily a welfare-centric, but an economy that is inclusive, that provides protection, that creates equality and all that. And a lot of beggars, it's not like they cannot find a job, and it's not like they don't want to integrate themselves to the larger society. It's because they are facing problems themselves in terms of how they can fit into this kind of society.
But like economic policies and all will take a really long time to come along. So that I would have to disagree with you on that. But let's move on to our next news. Malaysian PM sues news site for libel. Prime Minister Najib Razak sues Malaysia Kini, an independent online newspaper, for libel.
So this was reported by the Global Voices Advocacy, and the story goes the Prime Minister layers point to some comments made in 2 articles published in the site. Stephen Gunn, the editor-in-chief of Malaysia Kini, maintained the site will fight the suit vigorously. Amnesty International labelled the lawsuit as an attack on the right to freedom of expression.
So I think we have reported this before last week, remember?
Yeah,
and,
I guess this is a follow-up.
Yeah. The Bar Council actually advised our Prime Minister to revoke his lawsuit against the newspaper.
And interestingly, this is also a similar lawsuit that Singapore Prime Minister filed against a blogger last month. In a country where media censorship exists at large, online platforms have become popular among activists to voice their opinions. So yeah, people have definitely moved to the new media. I mean, even Durian ASEAN is a form of new media as well. We're an online radio station.
But going back to Singapore, remember this chat we had with one of our guests, how she was telling us that in Malaysia, actually, we have a lot more media freedom compared to Singapore. Like she said, when something like this happens in Singapore, there is no way the Bar Council would even dare to advise their Prime Minister to revoke his revoke his charges against the newspaper. But in Malaysia, we can actually do that. And she was telling us about how lucky we actually are when we actually think otherwise.
Well, if you compare ourselves to the worst, of course we are lucky. But if we compare ourselves to countries that we aspire to be, I mean, we are moving towards the vision of 2020. Of course, we aspire to be a more developed society in a way that is not politically constraining the society. So when it comes to the issue of Prime Minister Najib suing Malaysia Kini, I think it shows that our government is moving towards the Singapore directions rather than a direction that we aspire to be. Anyway, in my opinion, I think the action is totally, is totally useless. The prime minister, I don't think he should sue them. I think he should accept criticism. Like if people criticize you, you shouldn't be too sensitive about it, because you are the prime minister. Your responsibility lies not in suing, media for reporting things that you don't like, but it's more like just do your job. That's it.
And listen to them as well. Why are these people saying these things about me? Like what am I doing wrong? What is wrong with my with my responsibility, my job?
To me, in an open society, the media should be as open as free as possible. the media shouldn't be constrained just because the Prime Minister feel that he doesn't like that kind of that
which
piece
is
of
why
news.
also the Amnesty International labeled the lawsuit as an attack on the right to freedom of expression, which I couldn't agree more.
So from Malaysia, we move on to another country, Brunei. And Brunei, with its headline Energy Efficiency Index for primary, secondary schools. So it's the news about the education system there. The Ministry of Development has released an Energy Efficiency Index, EEI, for primary and secondary schools in a bid to reduce energy consumption in government-run institutions. The Public Work Department, PWD, collected data from over 48 government buildings, including 40 schools and 8 commercial premises, to come up with a benchmark for EEI. And the EEI baseline will be used to evaluate energy consumption and will become benchmark for schools to ensure energy efficiency. And this was actually spoken by the Ministry of Development. Let me say the name.
Yeah, go
Pehin
ahead.
Orang Kaya Indra Palahuan Datuk Sri Setia Haji Suyo Haji Osman. That's how long the name is.
Yeah. So you made me do it a few days ago, I think. So the primary schools in the EEI is 40 kWh meters squared per year, and for secondary schools, it's about 60 kilowatt meters squared per year. And the minister said if schools are proactive in meeting this benchmark, it could result in a 20 to 30% cut in energy use. So I guess this is moved by the Brunei, the Ministry of Development for the energy efficiency in the country, focusing on their primary and secondary schools.
And remember, we reported, I think a few days ago as well, regarding on how Brunei is moving towards more a greener economy and a greener society, and I think this is one of its moves to ensure that energy is efficiently used in governmental buildings and schools and all that. So I think it's a positive move by the government.
Yeah, definitely. And we do know that the state of the planet now is that we're always running out of resources and all, and we're constantly looking for ways to look for alternative energies, alternative resources. So I think the best way to actually do it is to come up with ways to actually efficient ways to preserve our existing energy. So it is a good move by the Brunei government to actually start how do I say it? Start reducing energy consumption in government buildings and school, because I think they are the ones that is actually using up most of it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's a positive move by the government in a sense that, I think it's funny because our earlier reports about Brunei has always been about how much
backwards they are and all.
I don't want to use the word backwards, but
Why? It's in all the newspapers.
I mean, it's either about the monarchy or it's about the Sharia law, or it's about how much reduced in terms of the people's political rights is in Brunei. But at the same time, I can also say that Brunei has definitely been one of the forefront when it comes to like energy policy and all that. And I think it's a good move within Southeast Asia for all Southeast Asian countries to be more environmental in their approach.
They actually also came up with a new coral reef protection program, and they said that they wanted to be the premier in the entire region. And if they come up with a good enough program, the other countries in Southeast Asia could emulate them, especially Malaysia, I think, because we also have this coral reef protection schemes.
And we at Durian also we want to have more discussion on the environment. So definitely we want our country especially to be more environmentally conscious towards the earth. Anyway, move on to the next one, which is
reported by the Vientiane Times. So the EU launches 3 new climate change initiatives. The European Union will join hands with civil society partners to launch 3 new climate change projects in Laos, which are together valued at more than 6 million euros. See, I got that Lao without the S. So the launch was chaired by Charge d'Affaires of the European Union delegation, Mr. Michel Goffin, and attended by representatives from the government, EU member state ambassadors, development partners, and civil society groups. The program aims at supporting work at the policy level with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, and other government agencies, and also providing concrete support at community level to pilot sustainable and climate resilient land use of approaches and adapted farming systems. Among the other main aims is to increase the adaptive capacity of remote ethnic communities with the support of local authorities and the application of sustainable adaptation model. So once again is another news about natural resources and environment.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that European Union is interested to sort of pave the way and launch 3 new climate change initiative. I think climate change should be the agenda of all regional government bloc. I mean, we see that in EU, but in ASEAN, I don't think there's much discussion in terms of climate change. I mean, there is definitely, but there's very few initiative that is ongoing.
Yeah, and all these developing countries are usually the most vulnerable ones to climate change, and I think it's very good that European Union is trying to how do I say it, get into forming a dialogue or some kind of a cooperation to actually make this thing happen between all the countries, as opposed to only just focusing on them. They're actually bringing in all the other countries as well.
And we have to realize the demographic, the geography of Southeast Asia. There's a lot of islands, and if the water level, the seawater level rises, it could definitely, covered most of the islands and most of the landmass in Southeast Asia, and I what I see is within Southeast Asia there's very little discourse about it. Like what can we do? I mean, there's almost no discourse in terms of how to prevent another haze happening in this region.
I think a lot of NGOs are making the effort, but not actually the government themselves. I think, but the most that the NGOs can do is increase awareness or hold events or workshops, but they cannot actually reach out to such a mass
that's true.
crowd.
I mean, can you imagine? I think we have a discussion with someone last week or this week, I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Regarding on the El Nino phenomena, and no one is actually talking about it, and not even at the highest level.
Aware about how dangerous, about how it's actually going to affect us, because I think the name has been thrown around a few times over the last couple of years. So people are just they've become so ignorant about it. Like, it's just another storm. Yeah, it's just another climate change. That we've become so ignorant that we just get to that stage.
That's true. And so I guess I applaud European Union for taking this initiative. And we have another one news.
Yeah, it's about Philippines, where their top militant leader is arrested in Philippines.
So this was reported by the New York Times.
In Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. The Philippines captured a top leader of a militant group on Wednesday, who the United States says was said funneled money from Al-Qaeda to Filipino rebels, blamed for more than a decade of bombings, beheadings, and kidnappings in the southern part of the country. Khair Mundos, who is 50 years old, a leader of Abu Sayyaf, was arrested on Wednesday morning at his in-laws' house in a densely populated section of southern Manila, according to a statement from the police. And the police had the house under surveillance for 2 months before the arrest.
So anyway, just to give a background, the United States have been helping the fight against Abu Sayyaf for years. And So in the past decades, the number of Abu Sayyaf fighters has dwindled to fewer than 400, and the group have focused more on kidnappings for ransom operations, like the one in Sabah happened quite a number of times, and in pursuit for profits rather than ideology. According to the Pacific Strategies and Assessment, it is a risk assessment group based in Manila.
So I think, well, I don't want to speculate anything, but
it seems that the U.S. is having a lot of
issues with different militant groups, and
I mean, since 2011, 2011, of course, terrorism has always been the top agenda of the U.S. Although I think nowadays it's not as apparent as before, but Abu Sayyaf group is definitely one of the main focus. Especially Philippines has already signed a 10-year deal to have the U.S. military base in their country. So definitely, Abu Sayyaf to sort of contain Abu Sayyaf is one of their goal.
So I think Abu Sayyaf is also one of the smallest militant group in the southern Philippines, and in the 1990s, the group was estimated to have as many as 1,000 fighters, and it also staged some of the most high-profile kidnappings, bombings, and attacks in other countries.
For example, in April 2000, the group kidnapped 11 Western tourists and 11 resort workers from a resort in Sipadan, Malaysia. And in May 2001, the group kidnapped 24 tourists from a beach resort on the Philippine islands of Palawan. And of course, recently, there was one kidnapping cases where one Chinese tourist and one Filipino resort worker were also being kidnapped. So in that sense, I think it's moving towards a more positive move towards the U.S. for arresting the top militant leader. But at the same time, it also seems like the activities of Abu Sayyaf, which is focusing more on kidnapping, is actually more detrimental to us.
Exactly.
Because they always come to the shores of Borneo, which is in
especially through
Sabah,
because it's so easy to enter from the Philippines.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say that what will happen to the other members in the group, because as we know, usually when one leader dies or is captured, it's always easy for another person to step up and say, okay, this is it, we're going to continue with the fight, especially now that our leader is arrested. So what are they going to do about the rest of the members? So are they just contented about arresting the militant leader?
Yeah, that's true. But I hope that there will be the Abu Sayyaf will sort of get more weaker, and then just assimilate within the larger society of Philippines, and I think the peace agreement between southern Philippines, which is Mindanao, and the Philippine government is definitely, and also with Malaysia as the mediator, is definitely one of the important key process to get this extremist group to sort of like blend into the majority of society. So anyway, that's all the news that we have today.
Yeah.
But we will continue again
With Blast from the Grassroots coming up at 8:35.
Stay tuned.